The name Mercedes-Benz has a status that few motorcar manufacturers can match. The Mercedes 190 range was introduced in the autumn of 1982, the first of the Mercedes models with the new streamlined bodywork. Following a drop in sales, Mercedes felt the need to introduce a number of new features on this year's models. Let's start with the car's exterior. New bumpers with lower spoilers both front and rear. New plastic side moldings which, together with the spoilers, are available in 12 different colors to match the 24 different paint finishes. The side moldings give the car a somewhat lower and sleeker look. There are special insert points all round for the jack. Under the plastic wheel covers, we find black rims. The windscreen is deeper set so that the frame protrudes at the sides, a useful feature which forces the wind upwards over the roof and reduces the amount of dirt and grit getting to the side windows. Having got over its teething troubles now, the 190 gives a very good impression, as Mercedes always do, you might say, in terms of quality and detail work. It's available in a number of different versions and engine sizes. We've chosen to take a closer look at the biggest seller in the Mercedes 190 range, the 190e. The large steering wheel makes it somewhat difficult to get into the driving seat. Once you've negotiated this, however, you should be able to find a suitable driving position. The driving seat is adjustable lengthwise and for height. The latter system is remarkable insofar as it rests on two curved rails, which can make it difficult when adjusting distance to the pedals. The driver's seat squab can now be adjusted, as can, of course, the backrest. And this year, both front seats provide more lateral support with softer upholstery, although they still felt too hard for real comfort. The front seat belts have automatic tensioners and can now be adjusted for height. Most of the controls are easily reached, even though the fascia panel isn't angled towards the driver. Heating is adjusted by means of a warm air regulator for the left-hand side of the interior, an air distribution control, and a warm air regulator for the right-hand side. The fan has 4 speeds and is adjusted with a slide control. The light switch to the left of the driver is somewhat unfortunate insofar as it has 7 different functions, while the combination switch on the steering column boasts 10. You'll need to nosedive into and carefully study the instruction manual, as well as plenty of practice, before you finally sort out the multi-functions on these 2 controls. The passenger side wing mirror, but not the driver's side, is electrically adjustable by means of a switch in front of the gear lever. The speedometer and rev counter are large and easy to read, but their white illumination isn't really suitable for nighttime driving, as it can impair the eye's ability to adjust to the dark. The temperature, oil pressure, fuel consumption, and fuel level gauges are grouped rather too closely together to be easy to read. The fuel consumption gauge measures the pressure at the inlet pipe and gives a misleading picture of the actual fuel consumption. One new refinement improving safety is the beam adjuster, which allows the headlamp angles to be adjusted from the cockpit. The windscreen wiper, yes, just one, manages to cover 86% of the windscreen. But there's too much of a delay between sweeps when, for example, overtaking a lorry in wet conditions, even on the fastest setting. There's a section for a radio with connections on the lower part of the central console, but there's no room for any extra radio equipment. In contrast, there's plenty of room in the ashtray, apparently designed to accommodate the biggest of cigars. It's so easy to hit one's head when getting in and out of the rear seat. A helmet might be a useful accessory for your passenger. To improve legroom in the back, much criticized in the earlier models, Mercedes have invested a great deal in altering the floor pan below the back seat. There's now 20 mm more legroom and 6 mm more headroom in the back. The spring cushioning in the rear seat has been replaced by cheaper and thinner foam rubber. The back of the front seats are now also lower slung, but it would still be going too far to promise backseat passengers a comfortable journey over long distances. The first aid box has been ingeniously placed in the package shelf. The boot lid opens to a good angle, but the high rear panel hampers loading. According to Autograph, the luggage compartment can take 11.1 cubic feet, which compares with 13.3 cubic feet in a four-door Saab 900. You'll find the warning triangle on the inside of the boot lid, which lacks padding and isn't even sprayed in the same color as the bodywork. The standard-sized spare wheel is under the carpeting in the boot, together with the toolkit. The flat floor of the compartment makes for easy stowage, but it isn't flexible. One misses a hatch between the rear seats that can be lowered to accommodate long items of luggage. The petrol tank, placed as it is between the back of the rear seat and the luggage compartment, puts paid to any straight-through loading possibilities. When you open the bonnet, a little lever pops out of the radiator grille. Pulling it releases the safety catch, a clever little device which saves you from getting your hands dirty. When checking the engine, you risk bumping your head against the grille. Time, perhaps, to don that helmet again. All the models in the 190 range have rear-wheel drive, with a conventionally designed and longitudinally mounted engine and gearbox. The 190E is powered by a 2-litre, 4-cylinder inline injection engine, with a single overhead camshaft and 2 valves per cylinder. Let's have a look at the most common service points. It's easy to find one's way around the bonnet, and service points such as the dipstick, oil filler, and cooling water nozzles, spark plugs, and water fluid reservoir are all easily accessible. One detail that could cause problems is the control knob, which is used to adjust the ignition according to the octane rating of the petrol you're using. It's vital to set it right. The instruction manual warns that incorrect adjustment can damage the engine. We find the fuses of the old type most unfortunately placed under the hinge of the bonnet. Turning the car over to see what's underneath, we examine first the front suspension. This is composed of a wishbone, anti-roll bar, shock absorber, and separate suspension spring. The spring isn't pivoted against the wishbone assembly, with the result that it distorts in hard cornering, giving a rough ride and adversely affecting road holding. The rear axle is split, with each wheel mounted on 5 stays and link arms. This advanced suspension system effectively absorbs most holes and bumps in the road. The ride is pleasant and comfortable, very much a result of the balance and interplay between the chassis, wheel mountings, suspension, shock absorbers and tyres. The underside of the chassis is smooth. Rust will have a hard time getting a grip here. The fuel and brake lines are well protected. The fuel tank is positioned above the floor pan between the back seat and the luggage compartment. Its capacity, no more than 12 gallons, leaves a lot to be desired. Disc brakes all round, but the discs on the front wheels aren't ventilated as they are on Saab models. ABS brakes are an optional extra. The 122 horsepower engine in the Mercedes 190e feels weak and sluggish, particularly in city driving. Mercedes have adapted the ratio of the gears in the first hand to allow high-speed autobahn driving at low revs in the top gears. It's a good thing that the gearbox is smooth and easy to handle, as one has to do a lot of gear changing to make the most of the engine. Here's the 190e overtaking in fourth gear, with the driver accelerating from 50 to 75 miles an hour. On the right, we see how a Saab 900i16 performs as a comparison. The i16 engine does have 11 more horsepower, but the difference is mainly due to the engine's ability to deliver more torque at low revolutions. Mercedes have modified the ratio in the rear axle on the 1989 models, but it still feels too high in most situations. Engine, wind and road noise is somewhat higher than one normally associates with Mercedes, but nevertheless quite acceptable. Before we sum things up, let's look back in time to 1960. This is a 1960 Saab 93F, powered by a two-stroke 33 horsepower engine, with 3 forward gears and 1 reverse. As with all of Saab's models, the engine drives the front wheels, and look at that bodywork, typically Saab, and extremely aerodynamic. Today, the amount of room inside the 93F wouldn't be much to write home about, but by the standards of that time, it was right up there with the competition. And on this export model, the red wheels and the white-walled tires match the upholstery, the dashboard, and the steering wheel. Quite elegant, don't you think? The luggage compartment is in fact flexible. The back of the rear seat can be removed, and note the boot opening, which allows easy access and loading. This little object in the middle of the screen is in fact the 3-cylinder 750cc engine. There are no valves on the two-stroke engine, which, to be properly lubricated, has to be run on petrol with a 3% mixture of oil. Mercedes actually had a model called 190 back in 1960. And, as we'll soon see, the name is by no means the only thing it has in common with today's Mercedes 190. Over the past 100 years or so, Mercedes have built up a solid image of prestige and quality. That 190 was also a relatively expensive and exclusive car. If we compare the interior dimensions of the old 190 with today's models, we find that the 1960 model is, in fact, more roomy. The The wheel, on the other hand, is just about as big as it ever has been. Under the bonnet, we find a straight 4-cylinder 1.9-litre engine with 2 valves per cylinder. The engine develops 90 horsepower and, as usual with Mercedes models, it drives the rear wheels. The engine in today's 190e develops a further 32 horsepower. But in general, the technology is the same, even though there are 29 years between the two models. Over the years, more gears have been added to Saab's various models. They've been made more roomy, more comfortable. But the biggest changes have taken place under the bonnet. Saab engines have been significantly boosted with increased horsepower, not to mention the by far most remarkable development, the move from no valves at all to 4 valves per cylinder. We now return to the 1989 models. Let's examine what potential customers would gain if they chose a Mercedes 190e. The main thing the 190e offers is prestige and quality, as well as a higher standard of road comfort. Low noise levels, a high standard of safety, and high second-hand value and low service costs. The question is now, which of Saab's models should we choose to compare with the Mercedes 190e? The Saab that's most similar to the 190e in terms of performance and interior dimensions is the Saab 900i16. But if price is the main criteria, one could then buy a Saab 900 Turbo 16 for about the same price as a Mercedes 190e. You'd then be getting a car that performs far better and is considerably better equipped than the Mercedes 190e. The Saab 900s have a more sporty image, with more individual character, and even though they've been on the market for some time, their basic design concept is considerably more up-to-date than the Mercedes 190 range. The main qualities that speak for the Saab 900i16 and Saab 900 Turbo 16 are the engine technology, which is more up-to-date, the front-wheel drive, which gives safer handling in bad road conditions, and it saves on valuable passenger and luggage space through the absence of a universal joint. Then there's the flexible luggage compartment. And what disadvantages are there to be found with the Mercedes 190e? The restricted interior dimensions, the outdated engine technology and drive system, driving's badly hampered by an exaggeratedly high gear ratio, mediocre acceleration when overtaking, a small luggage compartment that's difficult to load, and a price that's high in relation to the standard of equipment one gets. The group of customers attracted to Mercedes is mainly interested in the aura of prestige and quality so clearly exuded by Mercedes. Research has shown that Mercedes owners are usually engaged in various entrepreneurial occupations, such as running small businesses, shops, or working as craftsmen, and so on. The potential Mercedes owner is looking for a reliable, trouble-free vehicle and doesn't often think of comparing engine technology, performance, room, practical aspects or price with other models. The cramped passenger space and the overall impression one gets from the somewhat Spartan fittings in the Mercedes 190 doesn't give that genuine and solid impression which one normally associates with Mercedes. Mercedes' image of prestige and quality has in recent years somewhat deteriorated on the German domestic market. This is probably a result of the criticism that the 190 range has been getting since Mercedes first launched the range in 1982. Saab's customers are in general well educated, often in senior executive positions, or in the professions, in medicine or law, for example. The Saab customer is often very much an individualist. One important point in Saab's favor compared to Mercedes is the flexible luggage compartment. This aspect can tip the scales since both customer groups have, in general, families. You may not need to do more than talk about the family's need for more passenger or luggage space, or about that hobby that calls for bulky equipment. And you may have the customer deciding there and then on a Saab in the 900 range with the 16-valve engine. And if your customer requires even more room than a Saab 900 can offer, then that's the time to play that ace up your sleeve, a Saab 9000, with a wealth of fittings and equipment and one of the biggest driver and passenger compartments on the market. On several markets one can actually buy a Saab 9000 Turbo 16 for about the same price as a Mercedes 190e.